His name was Sergio Paulo, a nephew of mine that died at the age of 21, and who I still call my nightingale because of the way he always brightened up my life. For me, he still is Sergio, and I believe I will see him again, but independently of our beliefs, the pain we feel when we lose someone we love cannot be described, just felt. And that pain determines so many choices we make in life. Today I will leave you with my sister Isabel, Sergio's mother. Isabel decided that her son's life would carry on spreading its light, and she chose to become a trauma and grief counsellor, helping others in their grief. Please listen now to every word of Isabel's speech, as she was invited to address as the guest speaker at a ceremony other parents that too had lost their children. Every word she says brings incredible light into our need to heal with our pain at our pace. Be blessed.
I am honored and privileged to once again be a part of the candlelight ceremony. For the newly bereaved, being here today is a painful acknowledgement that your precious child, your grandchild, or your sibling is no longer here. I salute you for having had the courage to join us today in celebrating their lives. This is the place where we come together, where we identify with each other, where we find empathy and a sense of belonging. We stand shoulder to shoulder with others that have experienced what is possibly life's most terrifying event. And together, we commemorate our children's lives. I find that this ceremony assists me in a very sacred way in connecting with the reality that my child is no longer here. Together we reflect, we support each other, we express our love and our longing, and yes, we transcend grief, for our love is fierce and very much alive. Society is very keen to lay benchmarks on our grief. They tell us what we should feel, how long we should feel it, how much is enough? Move on. Forget. Your grief is making me uncomfortable. Margaret Atwood, an anthropologist, wrote, "When someone is born, we rejoice. When someone is married, we celebrate. But when someone dies, we pretend that nothing happened." And when we hear those words or we have those looks land on us, either we retreat and we put on a mask, or we go inwards and we hide our grief. But if we are to heal, and I use this word very respectfully, we have to be allowed to mourn, to express our grief outside of ourselves. Grief is inside of us. It is what we think and what we feel when someone we love dies. Mourning, on the other hand, is the outward expression of that grief. It is the talking and the crying. It is the clothes we wear, the prayers we lift up, the tears we cry, the rituals we engage in remembrance and celebration of our loved ones. Rituals like this one, the candlelight ceremony. Julian Barnes wrote, "Grief is vertical. It has immense depth, while mourning is horizontal. Grief catches your breath and makes your stomach drop. Mourning moves you in a new direction. Grief is being, mourning is doing. And to mourn, we need community, the company and the witness of those who will compassionately support us. I cannot think of a more supportive and a more compassionate group of people than the one that I'm addressing this evening. Here, the names of our children are always our song. And the light of the candles reflects the love in the eyes of each one of us. My son's name is Sergio. He's fun, he's witty, he's mischievous, he has a heart the size of the world, and a smile that allows him to get away with anything. He's also messy and far too much of a flirt. He's a very normal young man. He was shot dead in the early hours of the 4th of September 2005 as we celebrated his 21st birthday. It does not matter that you are a parent, a sibling, or a grandparent. If you've lost someone you love so deeply, you know of that moment when an abyss opens from under you. You lose your equilibrium and you are swallowed whole. I felt like I had been pulled into a dark, stormy, underground sea. The waves hit me from all sides. They squeezed me. They threw me in every direction and turned me around and around until I no longer knew which way was up. I lost my axis. I was rocked by wave after wave after wave of intense and often unexpected emotions that I did not know how to navigate. But today, I want to tell you how I learned to surf. Words like meaning, hope, purpose, and healing may still make some of you cringe and scoff. All I ask tonight is that you keep your heart open to the possibility. There is no meaning in death, and meaning does not erase grief. In his book, Meaning, the 6th Stage of Grief, David Kessler wrote, "Meaning comes through finding a way to sustain your love for the person after their death while you are moving forward with your life. Loss is simply what happens to you in life. Meaning is what you make happen." And meaning became my surfboard. I had to believe that I was not helpless or powerless in that sea of grief, and that I had to take action, to take an active role in my healing by learning to surf those giant waves. A wise friend who had lost their child a few years previously became my teacher. She was not afraid of opening her grieving heart, and she allowed me to look deep into her soul. And what I saw was hope and faith instead of the brokenness and the despair I expected. Hope was something that I craved so desperately that I wanted to get to that same place as fast as possible. I wanted to get on that board and paddle out to shore right there and then. But I was just staying afloat long enough to gasp for air. And I had no energy for more than breathing. My friend told me to take my time, to not compare my grief to hers or anybody else's. She told me that yes, like the tide, grief ebbs and flows, but it's not as predictable, and I needed to prepare. I had to weather the storm until the sea was calm enough to get onto that surfboard and learn to ride the waves. Sometimes I would just float away, aware of the sadness, but with some resemblance of peace, navigating my grief just fine. Next I would hear a song, see an unexpected photo, attend one of Sergio's precious friends' weddings, and I would be floored by a rush of feeling so intense that again I was gasping for breath and trying to regain my balance before the next wave hit. Birthdays, anniversaries, holidays. These were some of the jolts that caused me to stumble, and I would find myself in the rough sea again. Learning to surf did not give me any power to control the waves. And even the most seasoned surfer wipe out sometimes. But in time, the waves became less frequent and I recovered quicker. And at other times, I'll duck under the wave and avoid confronting an issue until I felt safer to deal with it. And that is okay. This is my journey. The manual is engraved in my heart and the rules apply to me alone. 17 years later, the waves still catch me by surprise. A few weeks ago, I was in my exercise class when Unchained Melody came on the playlist. My heart did a somersault and I ran outside in tears. I loved the song. And Serge would play it for me on the piano if he felt that I was sad or stressed. But the same waves that slap us so unexpectedly and hold us for a little while also push us forward. Those tears were not a breaking down, but I believe they were a breaking open. Open to that sweet memory and to the gratitude that flowed from it. Memories that for a long time felt like stabbing pains now bring me peace, even with tears. Most times now, I am ready for those waves. And I stay on that board with a wide stance and with my eyes fixed ahead. Meaning does not have to be dramatic or in your face. With me, it started from moving from the why to the how and to the what. I still am not able to tell you why my son was killed. But I can tell you how his death has transformed me and what this grief has helped me discover about myself, about my life, and about what is important to me. My life has been radically changed because of the loss of my son. I recognized that I had survived, and I made the decision to try and live fully again. I cannot imagine the other woman that I would have become without having experienced this life-transforming loss. But I know that my son would be proud of the woman that I have become. I chose to get to know myself in my grief. The pain had opened up a hole so deep that when I tried to venture out of it, all I saw was a desert, and the colors were only black and white. There was no color whatsoever in my world. I felt lonely and I felt sad, even when I was surrounded by those who so deeply loved me. I realized, a refuge. I needed a place to connect with my grief, a sacred place where I could scream and rage, or I could just be quiet and remember. And I found that the refuge I needed was as much within myself as it was without. I went inward and I found a place inside of me where I could rest. In solitude, I started the work of repairing my broken heart. It was a painful, slow, difficult process. I longed to be the person I was before, to feel whole and to feel safe enough to bring down the walls that I had erected around my heart. And in the stillness, I could ask myself all those hard questions that would help me rewrite my story in a meaningful way. Refuge showed me grace. It showed me that in the midst of grief, I could find nuggets of joy. A hug from my surviving son, a gentle kiss from my husband, pure delight in spotting a dragonfly, my own unexpected laughter. I gave myself grace and I reveled in divine grace. Grace gave me permission to feel joy despite my grief. It did not take away the grief, but it did allow me to move forward with it. I would hear a song and be reminded of the music, the laughter, the fun and the happiness of the before. And those memories would elicit tears. But then I would allow those same memories to bring me smiles and gratitude. These were and still are very much moments of grace in my grief. And in Refuge, grief taught me many lessons. It taught me about surrender and forgiveness and courage, expansion, and it taught me about radical gratitude. Giving thanks even for the pain, for that meant that I had my son for 21 years. Grief gave me a new appreciation of life and encouraged me to turn up the volume on the good things in my life. There is still too much life that I want to live. My life has meaning because my son lived. And my life has meaning because my son died. Slowly, my days became lighter, and my life gained new strokes of color. The refuge outside of myself I found in a very special group of people, a very dear community, the Compassionate Friends. In it, I found a safe space to share my son's story and in time to share the gifts that he left me. And the comfort, the listening ear, the gift of presence, the understanding looks came from other Vilomahs. I did not know the term then, and in fact, I only learned of it a few months ago. A Vilomah is a parent who has lost a child. And the word comes from the Sanskrit, the same language that gave us the word widow, meaning empty. And Vilomah means against the natural order of things. Against the natural order of things. That defines you and that defines me. It is time bereaved parents had their own word, and I think this is a very powerful and meaningful one. In time, I found meaning in helping others who have experienced loss, and a new level of compassion and empathy has flourished from the desert of my grief. My desire to transform and to reach out is meaningful to me. When we learn to navigate waves of grief and eventually reach the shore safely, we realize that the landscape has changed as much as we have. We have to reorient ourselves, and holding someone's hand while they find their way in the new world after their loss helps me to recognize the meaning in my own loss. I keep my relationship with my son fresh and renewed. It was not just a physical body, and he still challenges me and encourages me all the time to do things that I would not normally do, to be more daring, to have more fun, and to birth new things, new connections, new ideas, new relationships. And this has brought real meaning to my journey of grief. I give infinite value to my family and friends because I have been confronted by the fragility of life. I pursue new friendships that are nurturing and rewarding. Conversely, I no longer waste time on the ones that give nothing in return. And that too is meaningful to me. Meaning has moved me from sorrow to delight. If you find that the idea of meaning and healing is impossible to even contemplate, maybe you can set it as an intention for the future. How often do we look at someone and think, I wish I was in her place or in his place? Maybe for now, instead of focusing on meaning, you can settle on moving from wishing to hoping. Wishing is passive. Hope usually precedes action. When I say, I hope I will get to a place, I know I have to put some effort into it. Consider how far grief has brought you already. Your presence here this evening is meaningful. And be curious about what your life and your grief would look like with meaning. Like grief, hope also ebbs and flows. Hold tight to it. And if the onslaught of the brutal waves of pain feel like home, because that is where you feel more connected to your child, sibling, or your precious grandchild, I urge you to find your refuge. You will find that there is also connection, meaningful connection in the calm sea, in peace, in joy, and in taking pleasure in the things that you once shared. In her book, Everything Happens for a Reason and Other Lies I Have Loved, Kate Bowler says, plans are made. Plans come apart. New delights or tragedies pop up in their place. And nothing human or divine will map out this life that has been more painful than I could ever have imagined. More beautiful than I could have imagined. I came here this evening to celebrate love, life, and hope with you. My son brought me here. Thank you.
And why any more words? My heartfelt love for you. Goodbye.